pyramids got worse as they began to build more of them. They did a poorer job.
Okay.
But the first pyramid was a step pyramid, and then there were a couple of pyramids by the founder of the fourth dynasty, Seneferu, whose picture we will show. And his son Khufu built the Great Pyramid. Now that pyramid is the 48-story building.
Okay.
And
that's 2200 odd BC or so, right?
It would be right. It would be around 2200 BC.
Okay.
It's built out of 2 million limestone blocks, 2,200,000 to be more precise. And each one of those blocks weighs about 2 tons apiece. And it's still standing. It's one of the only wonders of the world that you can still go back and see today. So what's important is that the pyramid age, a high-tech age, a technological age, which showed that Africans were architects, engineers, astronomers, and so forth, occurs here, and you have nothing like it anywhere else in the world going on, only on the African continent. And then we have an invasion here.
Now, where is Europe during this time? I mean, where is
there is no Europe during
Greece?
This time. There is no Greece during this time. You will not get a Greece until approximately at this point. In fact, you don't have.
When you say there is no Europe, you don't mean that the land doesn't exist.
The land exists, but
right.
what I'm saying is you don't have organized nations on the human record. There are no records of nations at that time. You have people there,
right,
and you have land there, but you have no organized nations. So what we call Europe as a concept is either a continental civilization or a nation or national or a series of nations that did not exist as an idea or during this period of the Pyramid Age. It did not exist.
Okay.
We'll begin to say something about Europe over here. Let's look at the invasion, though. This is the first invasion from Asia. That invasion was a very destructive invasion. In other words, they brought nothing other than the horse and the chariot.
Okay.
That's the only innovation that historians attribute.
This is around what time?
This would be shortly after 2000 BC, about 1700 BC or so. This group, the Hyksos, came in, and they stayed there for a while, about 150 years or so. Abraham came in about that time. Now, this is not to say that Abraham was a Hyksos. We don't know who Abraham was. But in the Bible, according to oral history, Abraham came in around 1750 BC, which would have been about the time of this invasion from Ur of the Chaldees. Moses then leaves about 1300 BC. Again, we don't know because all of this is oral history. And but these two overlap this invading period, which disrupts the continuity of Kemet. Kemet comes back. Egypt comes back in this grand and glorious dynasty. This would be the great golden age. See, there was a golden age in the Pyramid Age, there's a golden age in the Middle Kingdom, and this is the grand golden age right here. This is the King Tut, Nefertiti, Nefertari dynasty.
After the invaders were kicked out.
After the invaders were kicked out. And we will see who kicked the invaders out. And then we had a growth program again. In other words, what I'm trying to say is that all of the high-tech periods were led by natives.
Okay.
In other words, you have nothing left of what these people did. Okay. Then there's also a 19th dynasty. This is the Ramses period. I'm not going to talk about that.
Okay. We got about 10 minutes, I think.
10 minutes? Is that all?
Go ahead.
Okay. The 25th dynasty, which is the Revival Age. These are important golden ages of native black African rule. That's why I have them posted there. It's also important to notice that we have the first intrusion of Greeks into Africa here. This is the period of Alexander the Great through the Ptolemies, and then the Roman period starts just before Christ and comes up to here. So you have a 300-year period here of Greek rule, about a 300-year period of Roman rule. This is 600 years of foreign rule of Kemet. And so I'm putting this up because later when I show you a couple pictures of Greeks and Romans, we want you to see where they come into Egyptian history.
And they come in during what period
specifically? They come in just around the time of Christ. And they come in at the end of the period. In other words, they contribute literally nothing, but they take a lot out.
Okay.
So this is why we say the foundation of Greco-Roman civilization, culturally, is an African foundation. They took what they learned here home and began to imitate those cultural forms. Actually, the contact between Greece and Rome and Africa begins here when Africans went to Greece and Rome, especially
say that
Greece.
again now. Say that again.
Africans in this kingdom here, the 12th dynasty, around 2000 BC, Africans were in what we call Greece. In fact, one of the people I will show you on the slides is supposed to be the founder of Athens, according to Greek mythology, not according to African mythology, but I mean also according to African mythology.
But this is what the Greeks said about
But the Greeks
their
said
origin.
that their founder, you know, came from outside, especially Athens, which is very important. So I hope that this timeline will help us to place the pictures of the royal images in some kind of order as we go through those.
Okay, let me ask you to go through it one more time in our remaining minutes. Just briefly go over that again.
Okay, so you start with the first nation in human history, Tasseti. You follow Tasseti, you go a little bit north on the continent to a place we now call Egypt. It's called Kemet, for 12 families, and then an interruption from Asia. Some more families in the 18th dynasty, and then there's a period of kind of general decline. Another revival here in the 25th dynasty, sometimes called the Ethiopian dynasty. And then the Persians come in here, some more deterioration. Finally, the important period that we know most about Egypt from is the Greco-Roman period here, around the time of Christ, and that marks the end of political control of Kemet by native Africans. And it meant that outsiders will, from there on, outsiders will control Kemet. The culture stays the same through the whole 3,000-year period.
Okay. Any last comments final comments before we
break? You might say here is also when these people lost out, some of them moved south, and we have a 600-year period of rule by African queens at the same time that the Greeks and Romans were ruling the north part of the continent. These queens ruled from Meroe up near Khartoum in what is now Sudan. And there's a whole story to be told about them that we just will not have time to get into.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll come back. Thank you. Hello, I'm Lister Velt Middleton. We are very glad to have you with us for this second part of Free Your Mind, Return to the Source, African Origins, with Dr. Asa G. Hilliard III, the Fuller E. Calloway Professor of Urban Education at Georgia State University. Dr. Hilliard, would you address the cultural unity on the African continent, please?
Okay, I'm glad you asked that because many viewers will want to know why is it that you spend so much time doing the history of Egypt or Kemet when African populations in America, they believe, came from West Africa